That's number one. You kind of recently
painful, tender to the touch. May also
same shoulder length and the other. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the Real Health Podcast with Brandi and Amir. I am Dr. Amir Rashidian, a chiropractor. Brandi Rashidian is my other half, and the good-looking one. So
he has to say that.
Well, I mean it. If there's only one person in the world you're ever going to look at, that person is the most beautiful person on the planet.
That is true.
I don't have any basis to compare, and I don't need one. So, having said that, Real Health Podcast is where we read the latest articles and news reports, and we summarize it for you. We tell you what it means, how it applies to your life, and how you can use it to make yourselves better. And the purpose of why we exist and why we do this is to help you, our audience, be able to feel better, get stronger, live longer, and feel younger. And on that note, I'm feeling pretty young today. Are you feeling young today?
I'm not feeling old.
I always say I've been 30 for 19 years now.
Yeah, well, you do have that baby face.
I don't know about baby face, but I feel more energy and strength than I did even when I was 30.
Yeah.
I just feel like we're getting so much done. I mean, we're raising 3 kids, handling 2 offices, promoting books and podcasts and things like that. I could look back and go, when I was 30, I didn't have the bandwidth to handle all this.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we're definitely
least
more efficient.
Yeah, we are. I think we've grown and learned how to handle more. Trial and error, right?
Right.
You don't always accomplish that the first time around.
And then we know people who handle 10 times that, and we go, how do you do it? It's like when you were in high school and you saw someone in grad school and you go, how do you handle all that material? And you study and test and all that, but you develop tolerance to stress. And so our first article is from U.S. News. This is one I really want to talk about and go kind of deep with, because it does affect a lot of people. In fact, I just talked to a patient who had this. So here's what it is. The title says, Postpartum Depression Pill Now Available to Women, Drug Maker Says. The first postpartum depression pill approved for use in the United States is now available to women who need it. The drugs makers announced on Thursday. Sold under the name Zurzuvae. Zurzuvae
Sounds about right.
The medication can, they refer to this thing with like 3 other names throughout the article, so it's a little confusing. But anyways, we'll call it Mr. Z. Zurzuvae. The medication can quickly ease severe postpartum depression and help women regain their emotional equilibrium following childbirth. Having an option like Zurzuvae that can work at day 15 and improve symptoms in as early as 3 days has the potential to make a profound difference in the lives of women with postpartum depression. This is a quote by Dr. Christina Deligianidis, a professor at the Feinstein Institutes for Medical Research in New York City, who has been the lead investigator on the clinical trials that led to Zurzuvae's approval, said in the company news release. The medication will cost $15,900 per course before insurance. They have to say before insurance. So basically, a 14-day supply of this drug costs $16,000. Taken as a pill once a day for 2 weeks, Zurzuvae showed rapid, significant, and sustained reduction in depressive symptoms when compared to a placebo, according to a recent study of nearly 200 women, the FDA noted when it approved the medication back in August. Now, postpartum depression is a serious and potentially life-threatening condition in which women experience sadness, guilt, worthlessness. Even in severe cases, thoughts of harming themselves or their child. And because postpartum depression can disrupt the maternal infant bond, it can also have consequences for the child's physical and emotional development. This is Dr. Tiffany Farchione, director of the Division of Psychiatry in the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, said. We'll skip the rest. She said, having access to an oral medication will be a beneficial option for many of those women coping with extreme and sometimes life-threatening feelings. As many as 1 in 8 women in the United States develop depression just before or after giving birth. And I want to read a little more, but what was your experience with postpartum depression? Did you ever experience that with the 3 kids?
I would say I had mild postpartum depression after our first. I don't think I recognized it as that. I think part of the challenge is that women have not always been upfront and honest about how difficult pregnancy, delivery, postpartum, and having your first child or multiple children, how difficult that really is. And so we've I think lived in a society, especially from like the 50s and 60s, where you just didn't talk about it. You smiled, you made sure you had the children, they were all put together, dinner was on the table. Like you
I wonder
did
if
not
the husband
discuss that.
helped much either.
Oh, not back then. I think that was out of the norm. There was how our family units operated was vastly different. So I think part of the issue, and it still happens today. I was just talking with our music director last night, and she had somebody she had seen, and they were like, "Oh, I just feel like my mom had it all together, and I don't," and all of this, and I'm thinking to myself, none of us have it all together, right? None of us have it all together. All of us are stressed when we have kids. It may look like you have it together, or that you're able to find joy in those initial days. But the reality is a lot of people do not. It doesn't always work that way. I know for me, my mom died when I was very young, so I didn't have that basis to draw from. So I didn't know what motherhood was supposed to look like. I had nobody to tell me that. So I think that's where mine stemmed from. And I'm like, who's picking up this kid? Is this mine forever? Are you serious? What do I do now? So I think a lot of it really stems from education and us surrounding new moms and going, this is much harder than what you think it is, right? And being upfront and honest about that. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Do you think it's more prevalent in the Western world?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think women are more isolated in pregnancy. Other cultures, they're surrounded. Yeah. They don't leave the house. They have people to come over and take care of them. That is not the culture that we live in. It's hurry up, get back to work. Hey, you're on your own. Your husband is probably, out working too. You may not have the resources. We have a friend actually in Florida, and she knows and understands what's going on with pregnant women. And she has actually created a service where she has lactation consultants and doctors and doulas and midwives who can be available to answer those questions 24/7. So I think things like that are important. I'm not saying if someone is exhibiting very severe depression, I'm not sure personally how that varies from depression, general depression. So I'm not sure what's going on in the body that I know we're so much more hormonal, so I'm assuming it has to do with that. And maybe the bonding
about that
hormone,
a little bit.
Yeah, is disrupted. So I'm not so, I don't know how I feel about the medication. I would say if somebody is so severe that they think they're going to hurt them or their child, and intervention is needed, I think first and foremost,
but if that person is not
alone,
then there's less potential for that. It's nice to say, hey, can you take the kids for the next 30 minutes?
Right.
I'm in a bad place.
Right. And telling women that they should ask for that, like advocate
Right.
for yourself. It is not easy.
Right.
It is one of the hardest things that you have to do. So ask for that support. I think that's the challenge though, is that we don't feel like we can. So we don't want to ask for that because we feel like we're failing.
So this person, Sahar McMahon, age 39 of New York City, was one of those women. She participated in a clinical trial of Zurzuvae after the birth of her second daughter. She never wanted to hurt herself, she told CNN, but she felt she just was existing. There were points where my kids would be screaming. I would leave them screaming in the living room. I'd go in my room, close the door, scream into a pillow, and then I would think, what are we doing this for? McMahon said, my whole thought process was very pessimistic, and that's not who I am at all. After taking Zurzuvae, I immediately just started feeling more like me, she recalled. Women like McMahon need more treatment options. Standard of care antidepressants, while effective, take a few weeks to start to show benefit, with maximal benefit often not seen until after 8 to 12 weeks of treatment. Moreover, these pills must be taken for months or years and can have chronic side effects. So, and that's what they used to do. And that's the patient I was speaking to earlier today. She's on Prozac. She's been on Prozac since she had her kids. Her kids are fairly old. I mean, you know, they're in their 20s. Some are I mean, and I think they're in college. So she's been on that since then, and it was because of postpartum depression. They gave her that, and now she's been on it since then. And now the FDA had approved a different drug in 2019 for postpartum depression, but that one was delivered by a 60-hour intravenous infusion in a healthcare setting. 60-hour? And do they have to stay there for 60 hours?
Wow.
And you had to be overnight. I mean, 60 hours is a long time.
Yeah.
What is that, 5 days?
I'm not the mathematician. But
3 days?
Yeah, 24, 48.
Oh, yeah. 72 is 3 days. So, okay, yeah, it's a couple days.
Just under. Yeah.
It's a couple days. 3 days. Both drugs are versions of allopregnanolone, a neuroactive steroid that is a byproduct of the hormone progesterone. Levels of allopregnanolone can rise dramatically during pregnancy and then crash after childbirth, potentially contributing to postpartum depression. Now, why does it say potentially? You know, so anyways, basically that means this could be why there's postpartum depression, but this drug works on that. Raises that allopregnanolone. Says, although it is not yet known exactly how Zurzuvae, or now they're calling it a zuranolone, has rapid antidepressant effects, research suggests that neurosteroids like zuranolone work to support brain health.
That makes me nervous.
By rapidly reducing stress and restoring healthy brain network connections. The most common side effects with zuranolone were sleepiness, dizziness, sedation, and headache.
So none of those things do you want when you're a new mom. You're already exhausted.
Yeah. So now, look at this. It says, because of the danger of sedation, the FDA has put a black box warning on Zurzuvae's labeling, cautioning that users should not drive or operate heavy machinery within 12 hours of taking the pill. That's crazy. It's a 14-day treatment course. The medication is not taken chronically, not for the rest of your life. Should be taken in the evening along with a fatty meal. What's a fatty meal? Like eat a burger? Is it like have pizza? You eat it with pizza, ice cream, and a burger. Like just doing that might get rid of your depression.
Or feed it.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, now I had some ice cream. I feel better now. I'm not depressed anymore. And you know, so if you're fully sedated through the night.
We also do not think that postpartum depression is funny, but sometimes when you read the warnings on these medications, you have to think to yourself. I always think of the medication that helps with erectile dysfunction, but it makes you bald. So, there, to me, those things are just it's just kind of ironic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this one, at least it's only 14 days. So for 14 days, maybe you get some help. Someone to watch the kids at night while you're passed out after your fatty meal.
Yeah.
Guys, I mean, it sounds good. 14 nights, you just got to eat fat.
Yeah.
Steak and potatoes every night. We just talked about the omnivore diet last podcast.
You would definitely need to be omnivore to take this.
It may be. Otherwise, the vegan cheesecake you were talking about, that would be fatty.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bottom line is, if your postpartum depression is so bad that you feel like you need help, get help. But I say no matter what, women who are just getting ready to have babies and have just had babies, surround yourself, create a great support system, have somebody coming over every couple of days to check on you, if not every day in the first month or so of the baby being here. Understand that if it's your first child, you do not have all the answers. There's so many things that occurred when we had Naveed that we didn't know. You just don't know what you know. Or you don't know what you don't know either. And so surround yourself with people who do.
Oh yeah, I was terrified when we brought him home from the hospital.
Yeah, you look and you're like, now what?
I was like, we should stay at the hospital for a few months.
We're like one of the few that were like, nope, we're not ready to go. So.
But what is that depression like? Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Whenever I go to my hometown in Iran, we stay there for 2-3 weeks. Every time I'm leaving, I go through this deep depression. And I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why. And even when I get back for like 3 days, I'm really depressed.
It's sad.
And I don't know why, because I don't want to live there. I don't want to live in Iran. I like our life here. And I always look, logically, I'm always so happy to be coming back to America. I mean, this is a great place. And I really love it. And I like where I grew up. I enjoy my childhood memories. It's nice to go back and visit. But I'm happy to leave on a logical level. But I go through this deep depression that's unexplainable. Is it something like that? There's other times where, like, I know when I was a child, like a friend of mine would come, like my cousins would come visit us, and they lived in a different town. They'd come stay with us for a week. When they would leave, I was depressed for a couple of days because I was like, oh, my cousins are gone. I'm alone again. And I was an only child. I didn't have brothers and sisters. So what's it like?
I say it's probably that on steroids, no pun intended. But it's really hard because you know that you shouldn't feel that way because, like, for us, we had worked so hard to have this little baby, right? Paid out the wazoo to do fertility treatments to be able to have him. But then you're like, so why do I feel like this? Why am I okay if I'm not holding the baby? Why do I just want to be by myself? Why? Like, you don't understand. And I think that's the hardest thing because there's this dichotomy between what you know you should feel and what you're not feeling. And that's really, really hard because you just don't understand it and it doesn't feel like you can control it.
Is it similar to a midlife crisis that men go through?
I mean, I'm not a man.
They go buy sports cars and stuff?
I would say no. It's probably different than that.
All right. Well.
So get help. Make sure that you're
bottom line, please don't ignore it. Don't brush it under the rug.
Call me. I will come hold your baby.
Yes.
I love holding babies, especially when I know I get to give them back.
That's right.
And I'm the baby whisperer, so bring him to me.
That's true.
I don't mind a crying baby.
Speaking of babies, this is from NBC News. The title is Why There Still Aren't Limits on Lead in Baby Food. That's a little scary.
Yeah.
So, an outbreak of lead poisoning in children tied to contaminated cinnamon applesauce pouches illustrates the gaps in how heavy metals in foods are regulated.
How about heavy metals in everything?
Or maybe we shouldn't eat food out of pouches. I don't know. That's a different talk for another day. Despite strong efforts to limit lead exposure from sources like paint and gasoline, the U.S. government doesn't broadly limit lead levels in food, a blind spot that's become all the more glaring, experts say, as cases of lead poisoning in young children linked to contaminated cinnamon applesauce continue to mount. As of Tuesday, lead poisoning had been reported in at least 65 children, all younger than 6 years of age, who ate pouches of now recalled cinnamon apple puree and cinnamon applesauce. This is up from 57 cases 2 weeks ago, according to the FDA. Children under the age of 6 are most vulnerable to lead poisoning, the CDC says. The heavy metal can lead to developmental problems, damage to the brain and nervous system, and problems with learning, behavior, hearing, and speech. Lead exposure can lead to lower IQ and underperformance in school, according to the CDC.
Well, I want to know why applesauce. What is it? The producer? Who's the producer of this?
Yeah, so I think it's packaging and also apples itself if they're grown in the wrong soil and things like that. But so in the 1980s, the government began work to reduce children's exposure to lead from paint and gasoline as well as from food packaging. Lead-based paint remains the leading cause of lead poisoning in children. And so this is amazing. It's recent. It's 2022. The FDA introduced limits for levels of lead in apple juice and juice blend drinks. And it also set lead standards for candy made with sugar. So, I mean, it basically, this is something, there's lead in everything, which is phenomenal. I had no idea.
Trying to figure out why.
And the FDA waited till 2022, and they said we cannot eliminate lead from food. That's not possible. So all we can do is set limits. So you can only have this much lead. And so lead is naturally occurring is a naturally occurring element in the Earth's crust. Can be found in soil, water, and air. Trace amounts can infiltrate the food supply in various ways, including in places where foods are grown, raised, or processed. This is a pretty significant thing.
Yeah.
This makes it essentially impossible to eliminate all traces of lead in food. The agency, they're talking about the FDA, so FDA does routinely monitor levels of toxic elements in foods. I just think they can't do enough of it. However, the agency's oversight of food is not as strenuous as its oversight of prescription drugs, which means they spend more time and effort and resources looking at drug safety versus food. Even though they're called the FDA, the D part gets most of their attention, not the
personally
F.
think we should segregate it. I think we should have somebody just checking on drugs and let that be. And we need to double, triple, quadruple who's monitoring the food.
Yeah, I mean, they're monitoring, testing, manufacturing, marketing, and distribution of all drugs. The FDA instead puts much of the responsibility for oversight of food on the farmers or manufacturers of the products.
Okay. But then what?
In 2021, a congressional investigation found that major commercial baby food brands were contaminated with significant levels of arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury. These are like poison. All of them are. Mercury is a neurotoxin, so is lead. And mercury.
So many of those things are in the water sources. So if these companies and manufacturers, because people dump pharmaceuticals down drains, that gets into the water source. Do you know what I mean?
So the article says it takes a crisis or pressure from Congress to force the issue. Like, otherwise, they don't act on it unless there is a crisis.
Well, I'm just going to say there's a crisis.
Right.
Our food is not safe. It is not healthy.
There's been efforts to do legislation, and it has fallen by the wayside, but they plan to reintroduce the legislation soon. And among provisions, it would set the limit for lead allowed in most baby food to 5 parts per million. What they found was it was like 200 times more than that before. So they said if it's 5 parts per million, it's not as bad.
I would prefer no lead, no arsenic.
So what do you suggest our audience does? Let's say they have they like the applesauce in the pouches and so on. Our kids eat those, right?
Yeah, they have. Yeah. They don't eat a lot of it.
Yeah.
When they were very little, I made all of their baby food. I went and got organic food. I cooked it myself. I processed it. I did have pouches. I put it in pouches. I put it in my own reusable pouches.
You turned our oldest orange.
I did. I gave him way too much carrot and vegetables.
Sweet potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a little.
Literally, the pediatrician's like, your son's orange.
Yeah, she's like, are you giving him a lot of carrots? And I was like, I don't know if it's excessive. Why? Because he's a little orange.
We had a recent president they used to call the Orange Man.
Oh yeah, I think that was fake tanning. Though.
Fake tanning, yeah. But this was food. So literally, orange food makes your skin orange.
Yeah,
Beta
if
carotene.
it's too high a level.
They also do they do beta carotene flushes, like niacin flushes. Like you can take a high dose just to turn orange, and then it's supposed to have therapeutic effects, but I don't recommend it. I'm not suggesting it because I don't know the true benefits of it.
Right.
I think you should eat vegetables of every color, and don't worry, it won't turn you orange unless you like only eat that and nothing else.
Right.
Anything else we should mention about baby food? I know the westonpricefoundation.org website has a 20-minute video that teaches you how to make your own baby formula. And if you can't nurse and you need to buy formula, you can make your own baby formula.
It's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Because you're using raw liver, you're using... Yes.
Wow.
You're using
now,
goat's milk.
breast milk has a really high concentration of cholesterol, but there's no cholesterol in commercial baby formula. So just keep that in mind also. And I know the development of the brain, nervous system, neurons, all of that require a lot of cholesterol. So,
yeah, when we did have to use formula, we used a very high quality organic formula that had no high fructose corn syrup in it. Please, please, please look at the label.
Yeah.
Most of the mainstream formulas out there do have, it's like the second ingredient in a lot, second to third, high fructose corn syrup. That is not supposed to be in a baby system. It's just not. So some of the organic ones are formulated to be a little bit closer to breast milk, but what a lot of them miss is that colostrum. And so when we did it, we would actually add fish oil, liquid fish oil, and we would also add colostrum. You can get bovine colostrum and probiotics.
So if we had to give them a bottle, we would open a small capsule of probiotics and put it in there, make sure it's a good quality, high source, and the colostrum. Bovine colostrum is almost identical to human. So we take a capsule, open that, put that powder in there,
shake it up,
and we put a little bit of fish oil, and then we shake the formula. Yeah. So, and some baby formulas have a lot of iron, which causes constipation. Yeah. So something to think about. If the baby's getting constipated, get a low iron or no iron baby formula. We can move on. CNN.
Let's talk a little bit more about lead.
Yeah, why not? This is by CNN. It says EPA proposes requirements to remove lead pipes from U.S. water systems within 10 years. Again, I go...
Why not?
Now we're talking about, I mean, we were so worried about lead back in the 70s when all the engines had to be unleaded gasoline and anyway, so at least we're doing it. So the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, is proposing a rule that would require water systems across the country to replace millions of lead service lines within 10 years. Lead exposure is linked to significant health and developmental problems, especially for children. We just talked about that. Lead and copper rule was established in 1991. It was revised in 2021, generally with more detailed and stringent requirements. Experts agree that no amount of lead exposure is safe. And we just talked about lead, so I'm not going to get into this, but in adults, it affects your kidneys. It affects your risk of cancer, stroke, kidney disease, and other poor health outcomes. But in children, it's really bad. And there are still 9.2 million lead service lines in the U.S., according to estimates from the EPA. So if the EPA and the FDA would get together, maybe they could solve this a little better.
I'm just going to ask my children not to have kids for at least 10 years.
There you go.
Which is good because that's about the age. And then maybe we'll have this lead thing taken care of by then.
Yeah.
So.
That's true.
I mean, but there are things. I mean, we're talking about drinking water, right? Nothing right now that comes out of the tap would I trust.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, we during COVID ended up, and we have a well, but we can still taste natural chlorine in our well, and it's significant enough that it changes the flavor of our water. And so we invested in a Berkey. It's not that expensive. I love the product. I only have to change my filter like every 1 to 2 years. It's crazy. Super easy to do. And it really removes most of that arsenic and lead and chlorine and fluoride and all of those things, opioids. It removes all of that out so that, and our water through the Berkey is, I mean, you can have a glass of our regular water out of the tap and have that. It is night and day different. So for a couple $100, people, you can have clean water. Totally invest in that. It's way worth it.
That's true. But, you know, we don't want to be showering with it and things like that as
Correct.
well.
But you can get attachments to your shower head.
That's true. There's filters for that. The 2 states with the highest proportion of service lines requiring replacement are Illinois and Rhode Island.
Who knew?
Where a quarter or more of service lines need to be replaced. In New Jersey, an estimated 14% of lines need to be replaced. And in Michigan, 11%. The national average is about 8%, according to the EPA. So that means there's some states that are near zero if the average is 8, and you've got ones with 25%. In 2021, a 2021 analysis by an environmental nonprofit found that more than half of the population drank from water systems that had detected lead levels exceeding those recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Oof. It's crazy.
So,
well, they have a lot of funding set aside to help with this. Let's hope it happens soon.
Biden administration has dedicated $15 billion to removing lead service lines through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And there is an additional $11.7 billion in general funding available through the drinking water state revolving fund that can be utilized for these types of projects.
Yeah.
Someone's going to make some money, the workers who go and replace these pipes.
That's right.
So we talked about lead with 2 articles, and we talked about postpartum. It was kind of a child baby podcast. It was good. Please, if you are undergoing postpartum depression, take it very, very seriously. And, you know, normally I'm not a fan of medication, but it's very rare to find medication that they say, oh, you only need to take this for 2 weeks, and then you don't need to take it anymore.
Right, exactly.
At least that's like that. Most other medications for chronic things you have to take for the rest of your life. And once you come on it, it's very hard to get off of it, and you can't get off of it. So, or you need other medical intervention to get off of it. So, anyways, I don't know if this is good news. I think there's probably other solutions that we need to explore as well. But please be careful. Don't drink the water if you think there's lead in it. And watch out for that applesauce that was recalled.
That's right. Who knew? All right.
Well, we'll see you next time. Take care. We'll be back in a week.
Thanks.